Hello, welcome to the Plaid Sheep Oracle. So we're facing in our unusual way, because Jupiter the cat has fallen asleep in my chair, my usual chair, and he's been having a very intense time. You know, cats are sensitive, but he seems to be kind of off the charts. He reacts very strongly to all of the solar weather and to a lot of the astrological transits. It's very overwhelming for his little self. So he is sleeping happily, and I do not wish to move him, so here we are. And this is, I think I'm going on about it because it's related to your reading, which has love at the center of it. Love and trust. And, well, self-trust as well as trust of other. But let's start standing up because it's easier to reach. So the first card is this fruiting body card from the Mushroom Oracle. It says manifestation, embodiment, expansion. I mean, she actually looks a little bit moth-like here, right? With those, her cap kind of looks like moth wings, her mushroom cap. And this whole deck, of course, is very sensual. Right? The term fruiting body. So this is a very Venus related reading, and she is moving opposite your sign currently. She's in Aries. Although she's getting closer, she enters Taurus on June 6th. And Taurus is her space, her nighttime space. So there's lots about that. The scene card here is the Earth Star, which says emissary, keeper, shapeshifter. And then the unseen is just the cap, which says protection, communication, identity. And it's that last one, identity. We concern ourselves a lot currently with the idea of identity. But it's largely about how we identify to others. Really, I mean, we talk about it as how we identify ourselves, how we think of ourselves, but really, it's about how we are in relation to others. If you didn't have anybody else to talk to, would you even think about it? You would just be you. It's an entirely relationship-based thing. You know, how it is that you present yourself. And I think that maybe you've been feeling conflicted about that, or unsure. You know, the South Node spent 18 months moving through your sign. And it may be that in that process, a good many things were kind of undone. And now there's this process of coming back together, and then of right, of growing out. The fruiting body, what we think of as mushrooms, are the fruiting body of the mycelium that lives below the soil, that is the network. The visible aspect. If many things have been undone, if you spend a bunch of time questioning beliefs, thinking about how you've appeared, how much of how you've appeared was coping mechanisms and masks, and what was not, that you may be in this space where you feel kind of exposed. So we have this sun, this giant eyeball of a sun. And that could feel, I mean, she's reaching up toward it. So she is welcoming the sun. Do you welcome the gaze of others? Right here, the King of Wands, he is somebody who welcomes the gaze of others. He's the court card associated with Leo, right? He's absolutely relaxed here, unconcerned. But below him is this Nine of Swords, where again, this person is being watched by this kind of demon entity, devil character. And the Shapeshifter card may imply that you haven't quite known, or maybe you've been trying different things on, like trying on different clothing. But the cap at the underside implies that you haven't really brought yourself out fully. That you have concerned yourself with others' perception. Now, the underside, interestingly, is this Wheel of Fortune. And that feels like there is something on its way that is going to, I don't want to say force your hand, but kind of. Or that may really present an opportunity to really be fully open. It may mean moving away from something. It may mean, striking out on your own in some way if you're part of an organization. YouTube, for example, right? It's great. We can upload videos. We can do it for free. Lots of people can see them. But there are rules. And if we didn't want to have to follow those rules, we would need to find a different way. So it may be that there's some connection that might need to be severed, because we do have the Three of Swords. But I think that this connection is not, I think it's not all it's cracked up to be. So maybe it's a job. maybe you're an artist and you have some deal with a gallery or something of that nature. And they show your work, but because right after that, we have the Lovers. So we go from this sort of heartbroken Three of Swords to the Lovers. And the Lovers is in part about making heart-based choices. Choices that are based on what your heart guides you to, what your love guides you to, as opposed to what's expedient or convenient or practical or, even financially advantageous, perhaps. And these things don't have to be exclusive. Where your heart is guiding you to might be very financially advantageous. It might be really optimal in many ways. But perhaps there's been something about it. And it feels like it's not so much the choice as it is how you are. I don't want to say how you present yourself, but how you are. Because then we have this Nine of Wands, and this too is feeling like somebody who doesn't want to be seen. Someone who's hidden themselves away. She's, curled up. There's nobody in sight. She's even sort of surrounded by these datura flowers, which are a kind of protective ring. The datura has a protective vibe. It is a poisonous plant, as well as a healing plant. But every part of it, including the flowers, contains poisonous qualities. So surrounding yourself, cutting yourself off from being seen, and it can, and I want to say that it, in this card, it looks very, there is a sort of fearful quality or a painful quality that maybe in the past, if you showed some aspect of yourself, it was rejected. And this could even be when you were very, 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 very tiny and you don't even remember. In your mind, you don't have a clear memory. It's just something that is remembered in your mind and your nervous system and your body. But it could also be a matter of habit. The Nine of Wands is just about the end. Right? The Nine of Wands is often thought of as persistence. So this could be, it isn't maybe even that there's pain associated with it. It could just be a habit. You've been this way for just so long that it's going to take practice in order to undo. It's like you shape-shifted into something and then shape-shifting back into the original. It's just unfamiliar. It's just unfamiliar. But then we get the Knight of Pentacles, who's absolutely with you. She's absolutely with you. She is there. You have her with you to help you practice, to continue, to be dedicated, to be devoted, to devote yourself to finding this self, this fruiting body that wants to be seen. We have the gift. It may not seem like a gift initially. I feel like this is connected to this wheel of fortune, because at the underside here we have this stranded. So this seems, this gift, and then actually right below that we have this Miss Sunshine. And this is also, right, this sun. So something is coming in some way. An offer, an event. I think it is that it's something external, that there's going to be some sort of offer, some sort of event, some sort of meeting that is going to really give you an opportunity, not to say force you into. It doesn't feel really, right? There's no tower here. So it doesn't feel, it feels more like Leo, you know, that, you know, maybe at work somebody gives you an opportunity to do a presentation and you've never done one before. So it's not a tower moment, but, you know, it can be a little bit stressful. It can feel, you know, I sort of picture somebody who's agreed to go out on stage and they're kind of dithering in the wings and somebody gives them a little shove. So they kind of stumble out onto the stage, and then, you know, once they're out there, that fruiting body can come up and be seen. Right? Because right below those, we have the queen bee. So there's some way of being, and it feels sort of soft. It does feel receptive. The decks that have come out for you mostly are very sensual, very Venusian kind of decks. And I'm going to say that it's more likely that it is a soft aspect that has been hidden or unused. Because we live in a very choleric world where action and ambition and fire are the virtues. Where receptivity and gentleness and approaching things through love, approaching things, you know, wanting a win-win situation rather than to win, just clear and then there be a loser. These are generally seen as soft or weak or you know, ineffective, perhaps. But we also have the lullaby. And we often talk about, you know, the rhythm of life. But what's coming through here is the melody of life. The music of life. It's making me think a little bit of that 90s show, Ally McBeal, where she had, you know, her own theme song that would play in her head. What is the melody of your life? how do you, kind of how do you see life sounding? If you were going to think up a score for your life, what is it like? Is it, like parts of Lord of the Rings score? Is it more like the Hobbits score, or, the elves score? And all of these, can have peaks and valleys. But there's an underlying feeling, an underlying principle, an underlying philosophy. The Lord of the Rings is actually kind of a great example, because each of the civilizations, or each of the cities, has their own kind of sound. And like the Shire sound, the Hobbit sound, is very, it's light and carefree. It embodies their philosophy of, second breakfast and green and growing things. What is the score of your life? And then to the gardener. The life as a garden, your body as a garden. We often talk about things in mechanical terms, your body as a mechanism, your mind as a computer. And these kinds of comparisons started when we began making things. Right? Dr. Hardy's comparison of the heart to a pump was occurring when mechanical devices and steam devices and all of these things were beginning to show up. If he'd been doing his work 200 years earlier, he might have had an entirely different metaphor. So moving back, I sort of feel like she's dressed in this building, but there's grass all around the bottom, and I kind of feel like she's coming back to nature. You've seen, photographs of buildings that have been abandoned for a while, and nature is reclaiming them. There's vines growing over the whole building, and there's plants growing inside, and the building is being crumbled by roots. You are coming back to your true nature, to this fruiting body. And then there's Morning Dew Girl, she's a repeat of this Knight of Pentacles. She goes out every morning to gather the dew. It's the devotion, the practice. And that too can feel challenging, I think, in our sort of chaotic world, but also because it might be a little nebulous. It's not like somebody telling you meditate for 15 minutes every morning. That's a kind of delineated practice. You just, you know what you're supposed to do. You set a timer. Great. This is much more nebulous and is a kind of day practice through the whole day, where you just bring yourself back. I mean, you could set an alarm for yourself, if that helps you. Every hour it'll ding, and you can get up from your desk and take a little walk and consider, how are you being? If you have to answer an email, how are you going to answer it? Who are you as you answer it? What score are you hearing under the email? Is it Jaws? Or You know, is it Enya? Or is it the Beatles kind of music? You know, what is the feeling of it? How are you showing up? So then we have the Copperhead. And I think this is your perception, you know, that there's dangers. And they may be, you know, individually, they may be big dangers. You may feel genuinely frightened of the response that you're going to get. Or it may just be irritations, you know, that something will take longer. Or that someone will mess it up and you'll have to go back and fix it. So whatever the dangers are, these perceived dangers, and, you know, maybe some of them will show up. You know, maybe something will have to be corrected or something will have to be clarified. Especially in the early stages as you're practicing. The underside here is the conch shell, which says homecoming and afterlife. And I want to say that it's the afterlife, after this kind of middle stage of your life, right? You showed up in the world, you began learning things. In all probability, living in the modern world, you hid some aspect of yourself. You may have hid your softness, you may have hid your enthusiasm, you may have hid your brains. It's possible. You hid something, and now it's coming back. You are in your afterlife. Then we have live oak. Longevity, reliability. This actually has been feeling like, kind of like community. There's this web-like aspect to this tree. And I think that you may underestimate or mistake your community. It may be that some of these dangers actually don't show up. I'm thinking now of a story that Brene Brown tells, where one of her parents, I think, maybe her mother, I can't remember, is taken to the hospital for something. And she shows up and her 3 siblings are there. And she goes into manager mode, right? She's just going to deal with everything because, you know, that's what she learned. That's what she does easily. It's comfortable. But her siblings actually kind of push back against this. They want to be a part of it. They want to participate. They don't want to be managed. And so they would absolutely have welcomed her showing up and saying, what are we going to do? You know, what would everybody like to do? You know, if she had asked them, if she had, you know, said to them, this is disturbing to me. I'm really worried. You know, what are we going to do? That would have been a real opening. Right? I mean, it worked out, but they would not have been distressed by that. They would have been pleasantly surprised. So you may be surprised by the response you get from people around you if you begin to do this softening, this change. Right? Because then we also get the pair of shoes, which is coupling and partnership. It may be that you will that through this you will create a whole new way of being in relationship with people that is beneficial to both sides. That there will be, that you're not going to be left flapping in the wind, nor will you be, treated with disdain. There's going to be a real partnership. And interestingly, we also have blackberries, which says agency and independence. It may be that you cut off a lot of avenues for yourself. If you're somebody who, routinely kind of takes over in situations, then this might actually give you more time and energy to spend on your own self and your own projects. If you are somebody who has been fearful of, being in the light, particularly the limelight, this could give you a whole lot of options. That you won't be, kind of in a narrow path, that what's available to you to do will be much bigger. And you won't, maybe there's ways in which you've really relied on people in particular sections of your life because you weren't willing to be seen. And now you won't need to rely on that. So, of course, we have the Knight of Cups, the Knight of the Heart. And interestingly, the bottom of the deck is this Ten of Swords, which, I often see as a corpse, but now I see as a sleeper. And the Knight of Cups is showing up to wake him up. I mean, in a long sleeper, a sort of Rip Van Winkle sleep. But this Knight of the Heart is showing up to wake him up, to wake up this aspect of yourself that has been dormant. And then we get both the Nine of Cups and the Nine of Pentacles. Independence, mastery, personal fulfillment, wish fulfillment, satisfaction. Especially that last one. I think, when we're hiding parts of ourselves, for whatever reason, habit, or because we think we have a real reason to, I think that we can never really be satisfied. Because it can be difficult, to ask for what you really want. If you are someone who's been very hyper independent, it might be really hard to ask and be open to an intimate romantic partnership where somebody comes and really shares your life, where you really open up to someone, where you allow this other person to make a bunch of decisions in your life. But if you feel very confident in and of yourself, then you don't have to be afraid of those things. You also then know that that person is with you. They're really with you. They're not with you because, you were presenting this front. And I'm interested too, I'm sort of seeing now that there's 3 9s. All right, this 9 of Wands and these 2 Cups and Pentacles. The only, oh, and then we also had the 4th 9 here, the 9 of Swords. So there is this sense of completion. We're coming to the end of this time period, and it's time to move into the next thing. And so we have Judgment. Ta-da! Right? This feels like you coming out on stage into the spotlight fully and gloriously, right? Your wings spread. And then there's the 6 of Cups at the end. And this just feels really like this homecoming. You know, like your soul has been waiting patiently as you went and explored all of these experiences and ways of being. I want to say that there has been nothing wrong, that you have not done something terrible. There is nothing to forgive. There is nothing to feel bad about, or guilty about, or ashamed of. It was the journey that you took. And you had experiences and learned things. Right now the score of your life is just changing. The melody is changing. Right? This homecoming. I mean, that message is repeating through the readings. The sense of coming home. And home not just to behavior, right? But to belief systems, to values, to how you think reality works. All of these things, a homecoming. And it's also an integration of you and your soul self. Formal advice. If you are feeling it, right? We have this malinconia, melancholy, sadness. There's this letterato under that. He's a writer, a scribe, but he looks like he might be blocked. I mean, that may be a thing. Maybe you've been creatively blocked. Perhaps you've had an idea and you poo-pooed it. Because it wasn't hip, it wasn't slick, it wasn't what the market is asking for. Or it was, it seemed really out there. There was something about it that made you, want to set it aside. And now you're going to bring it up. It's an idea for a novel or a movie. I mean, it actually makes me think of Star Wars, which was rejected by a bunch of people, and everybody thought it was going to bomb, and the initial sort of test runs weren't good, and so George Lucas went off to Hawaii and sat under a palm tree with Steven Spielberg, and they came up with Indiana Jones. So everything happens for a reason. But then it blew out everything. And, you know, I think that it was for Star Wars. I think that George Lucas actually took less money, but opted for merchandising rights. And everybody thought he was crazy, right? Merchandise hadn't done well up until that point. Well, so you just, you know, who knows? But he really wanted to make it. I sort of feel like Star Wars was a really channeled kind of thing. That it was the right time for it. And so that may be with the same thing with what you want to create. That you've been blocked trying to, you know, do this thing that you think will be really marketable or that sounds good, and go back to that original idea that's been in the bottom drawer, and you've, you know, it's like the telltale heart beating under the floorboards for your attention. And then the bottom here is disgrazia, right? Disgrace. So the advice. Now, interestingly, we have here hope. But then we have the falseness. And it's not that you, right, it's not false hope. It's that hope is not the energy that you want. Right? Hope is kind of a passive thing. There's like a shade of resistance under it. Right? A subtle energetic feeling. And what we have instead is the belvedere, which is the expectation of wonderful things. Coming back to that idea of trust. Love and trust. That if you move with love, you can trust that the beautiful things will come, that this expectation will be rewarded. Libra. Right? I think it's Jim Carrey in that speech he did at an Ayurvedic college commencement. Hope is a beggar. Right? Faith was his word. Trust, faith. And the North Node is moving through Pisces. Pisces is absolutely a space of faith and trust in the all that is, in the connection, in the love, in the grail. So Libra, it's time. I don't know what this thing is that's going to show up. But you can get ahead of it. You can be already opening, already fruiting by the time whatever it is arrives, so that it's even more gorgeous in its opening, because you will already be ready. I'm excited for you, Libra. I hope that this is feeling exciting and energizing and opening for you. I wish you the very, very best, and I will see you next time. So long, Libra.